Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you will have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey Vet Rehabbers, today's podcast is a sneak peek into our learning in the Online Pet Health membership. In addition to our Vet Rehab specific educational webinars, we also have you covered for the business side of running a vet rehab clinic. This training is actually a recording from the 2022 Vet Rehab Summit. Francisco Maia from the Canine PT Academy chats about overcoming criticism and when your best wasn't good enough. Fran goes deep into what is the actual thing that is holding us back. It could be fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of judgment or criticism, or fear of success. Before we head over to that training with Fran, a quick shout out to Donna Sidebottom for the post in Facebook about the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast. Thank you so much, Donna. Please send me an email at megan@onlinepethealth.com. I would love to gift you a limited edition Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast mug. If you're on Facebook, please come and join us in our online communities. We have the Small Animal Vet Rehabbers, Hydro Vet Rehabbers, Equine Vet Rehabbers, and our Business Vet Rehabbers. This is where all the vet rehabbers hang out online, share research, tips and advice, and it's a great supportive community. We'd love to have you online there with us. So over to Francisco.
So without any further ado, let's get kicking off for the day. It's over to you, Francisco.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I know we have people from all over the world joining us, so really excited. Here it's still dark, as you can see. I'm actually in Florida right now, and then I fly back home to Chicago this afternoon, but just very excited, like I said earlier, to get the day going on the right foot with you all. So we're going to be talking about when your best wasn't good enough, overcoming criticism to achieve excellence. And then just very briefly, what we're going to cover today, just going to briefly introduce myself for you guys who don't know who I am. Then we're going to talk about what holds us back from moving forward. We're going to talk then, how do we move forward, right? If I'm going to talk about the problems, also got to talk about the solution as well. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome or imposter moments, and also finish it up with what is my goal for you guys today after this lecture, and any additional resources and questions that you might have as well. Okay, so let me just brief introduce my story, how I kind of like came to be for you guys who might not know me. So as you can see by the letters behind my name, I'm not a veterinarian, but instead a physical therapist who found myself specializing in this field after working in the area of sports medicine in the human side after finishing my doctor of physical therapy degree from University of Pittsburgh back in 2012. Then I went through the Canine Rehab Institute, got my CCRT a few years later, and have been working with animals, with dogs, now going seven and a half years or so. And I'm also very involved politically on the behind the scenes of our field. I've been the president of the Animal Physical Therapy Association, Animal Physical Therapy Special Interest Group here in the United States. And I also co-teach, co-instructor the Business of Canine Rehabilitation course at the Canine Rehab Institute, in addition to having a couple of businesses, my clinic, which is called the Canine PT here in Chicago, and also the Canine PT Academy as well. But how did that come to be? How did I kind of like actually got involved, with it? So I grew up in Brazil. And I moved to the United States back in 2005. Okay, and I moved here to go to college. I played soccer my whole life. Played soccer through college, and because of that passion for soccer, I always find myself very interested in the field of sports medicine. I went through school and then I started working, like I said, in the field of sports medicine afterwards. And I really enjoy what I was doing. I was working with a lot of like young adults, active young adults, CrossFitters, runners, that kind of stuff. And although I loved working with them, I felt that there was something missing. There was something that I still wasn't quite excited about it every day. And that's when I heard about canine rehabilitation and about the Canine Rehab Institute back in 2013. So then knew right away that that's it. That's what I wanted to be doing. So through 2014 and early 2015, completed my CCRT. And then from that point, I was living in Pittsburgh, and my wife was also finishing her studies. And we found ourselves moving to Chicago for a variety of reasons. But one of them was the fact that I was going to start working as an animal rehab therapist at a local facility. And I worked there for a couple of years, and I learned a lot while I was working there, but gradually realized that I wanted more. I wanted to do things a little bit different. And more specifically, I wanted to be able to help the pet population in Chicago in a different way that was more in tune with my background as a sports medicine physical therapist, which eventually ended up evolving into the framework on how we do things now at the Canine PT. And that's basically how I made that transition then from animal rehab therapist to business owner. So I opened the Canine PT basically 5 years ago in the fall of 2017, and it was a mobile business, like a lot of us do in the beginning, and a lot of you guys might still be doing as well, where you're driving all over, you're going to people's homes and that kind of stuff. But then I gradually realized that if I wanted to grow, if I wanted to expand this, then getting a facility was going to be the next step. So we opened our facility in February of 2020. And yes, that was right before COVID. So as you can imagine, that was very fun to deal with all the circumstances that we dealt with 2020, while at the same time dealing with the stress of having just opened a brand new facility. But as you can see, I attached a couple pictures here of the facility. You can see that the layout and the design of the facility was more in tune with the different vision that I had in mind for what I wanted as canine rehabilitation. And I wanted to have a more warm, inviting kind of feeling, that a dog could walk on and just feel very comfortable, being there. And we have significantly grown even since 2020, even through the last couple of years. We have actually just finished expanding the clinic, and we double our square footage, and now we have 2,500 square feet, and also have grown in terms of staff as well. It used to be me, an administrative person, and then now I have 4 physical therapists, a veterinarian, a marketing coordinator, and 3 administrative staff that basically helps us just keep things going, just keep things rolling. And what happened is that over time, canine rehab therapists started to reach out to me to learn how it was that I did it. How did I open my business? How do I get it going, kind of stuff. And it naturally evolved in 2019, me opening the Canine PT Academy, which is a second business that I have where I coach and mentor canine rehab therapists on more like the business sides of things. And we have also grown quite a bit in that aspect as well. And now I have mentored over 50 physical therapists, veterinarians, vet techs, throughout the world. We also got a first chiropractor, which I was very excited, that has joined our program as well. But majority of our students come from the United States, but have coached people through Canada, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Australia, now Singapore as well. So it has been very exciting to be able to reach a worldwide audience as well. And I'll share at the end as well too, but also started our own podcast more recently, which has been wonderful because it has allowed me to put out even more content that has been helpful to canine rehab business owners all over the globe, okay? But enough about me. I just wanted you guys to have a very brief background on like how is that I got to this journey, because I was very excited when the folks at Onlinepethealth reached out to see if I wanted to speak at today's events. Because even though I love talking about business, I love talking about marketing, about sales, and you can find some of those trainings on the Onlinepethealth membership platform as well. The thing that I've realized over this journey as a business owner especially is how our mindset plays tricks on us. How, if we're going to move forward, how do we need to really work on ourselves first, okay? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, of course. Okay, and I don't know if you guys are familiar to the Awkward Yeti. I put it there, theawkwardyeti.com, or you can follow them on social media, because I took some of their little comic strips to use on today's lecture because it fits so well into what kind of like we deal with between our heart and our brain and what are they telling each other kind of stuff, okay? But let's talk about what hold us back from moving forward, okay? Because there are basically 4 things that hold us back from moving forward. 1 is the fear of failure. 2 is the fear of the unknown. 2nd, the fear of judgment or criticism. And the 4th one, it's actually the fear of success, okay? So let's break those down one by one. So let's talk first about the fear of failure. So by human nature, we have this aversion to failing because if we fail, then it makes us feel inferior. It makes us feel like we're not good enough, okay? And it makes us feel like if we fail on this, if I'm not good enough for this thing, then we start thinking, well, what about other stuff? If I have failed on this, then why wouldn't that mean that I'm going to be a failure on this other aspect of my life? Right? That's how our brain starts talking to us when we feel in fear, when we feel like we have failure. So because of that, our brain is very good about convincing us that something might be true if we keep telling ourselves that same story over and over and over again. So over time, we start creating this loop in our brain that leads us towards us actually avoiding taking risks, avoiding the possibility of us even failing, avoid going for something, avoiding moving forward, because we fear how we're going to feel with failure, and we don't want that. So our brain, as a coping mechanism to protect us, starts pushing us away from us actually pushing forward. Okay, so that's the first thing that prevents us from moving forward. Then the second one is the fear of the unknown, and this is a really big one. Okay, especially for those of us in the field of animal rehabilitation who might be trying to maybe get our own business going. But the same applies for someone who maybe just finished their certification and just fears the unknown of being out in the real world now. Just getting real cases, getting real dogs in front of you rather than a demo dog, rather than a case study in a piece of paper. Because having a dog in front of us who might not have all the answers to their case can lead us towards feeling very uncomfortable with that unknown. Okay, and here's the thing: we have all worked really hard to have the knowledge and have the skills as vet rehab therapists, but then suddenly the patient in front of you is not an example that you went through in class. It's not a case study that matches exactly what you learned in class, what you learned on your textbook. Not to mention at that point in time, you also not only you have the dog, the patient in front of you, but you have a human being as well. You have the client who is sitting in front of you in the exam room, waiting for your advice, waiting for your expertise. Because what I've realized is that we focus so much on becoming the best clinician that we can, and we forget sometimes that there is a pet owner involved in this process as well. And we need to learn how to efficiently and effectively communicate with them, because we are the dog's advocate. We are the ones explaining to the pet owner on the dog's behalf what is that we're finding and how we can kind of like help them. But suddenly, if we haven't been in this situation before, or suddenly we find ourselves with a case that feels more complex potentially, or that you haven't seen before or haven't seen as often, then that fear of the unknown starts creeping in. Okay, and for those of you that are running your businesses, I know a lot of us in Canine Rehab find ourselves, even if it's just us, small, mobile, going to people's homes, we find ourselves running our own small business. So no matter how big or small, there will always be many unknowns along your path. And here's the interesting thing about it, is that most of us who have found ourselves running a business in this field, even if it's just a one-person show, we found ourselves doing so because of circumstances, maybe because of a lack of job opportunity, or maybe because of low paying positions or whatever it may be. But the interesting thing is that most of us never truly intended on running a business at all, myself included. I didn't intend at all on running a business. That's not why I went to PT school. That's not why I got my CCRT. But suddenly I found myself in the position that, okay, if I want to do things how I want to do, if I want to make sure that I can make seeing dogs my full-time job rather than having to treat humans on the side to make ends meet, then I found myself having to figure it out how to run my own business. Okay. And one of the best advices I can give to you today is the fact that there will always be unknowns. It will never go away because there will always be something new that is going to come up, especially if you are on this business ownership journey as well. So what we can't have is a mindset that, oh, let me just wait until this feeling goes away, because it won't. And instead, we need to develop a mindset of embracing the unknown, on finding enjoyment in learning new things and appreciating the journey that we're on, rather than focusing so much just on the destination. Okay? So let me say that again. Learn to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. Having goals and aspirations of what we want to accomplish is great, and we definitely need to set goals for ourselves. But we also need to find enjoyment on how we're going to get to those goals, on the journey that we're on, rather than just focusing on the goals and the destination alone. Okay, and we're going to talk more about that later on. So that's the fear of the unknown. So the third one is the fear of judgment or criticism. So sometimes it's not the fear of failure that directly affects us, but the fear of judgment and criticism, the fear to how others are going to perceive us, how a client would potentially perceive the fact that maybe we don't have the answer to their question right there at that time. Or unfortunately, how a colleague would judge us if we don't end up making the best clinical decision at that point in time, because maybe we're new to this field and we're not as experienced, or we're new as business owners. And just as a little side note, because I always, for you guys who have maybe followed me a little bit, listen to my podcast, I always tend to have the tendency, because of what I do, to steer the conversations towards business ownership. This is also a big reason why so many of us that are running our own business struggle raising our rates and charging what we're worth. We fear the judgment of clients, thinking that, oh, they're money hungry. Or even, unfortunately, the judgment of other clinics or colleagues around us who are charging less. And we fear, what are they going to think of us? And I have often noted when talking to vet rehabbers that most of us acknowledge that we should be charging more for our services. We acknowledge that I'm not charging enough for my services. But I also notice that we tell ourselves that we can't do it. And we tell ourselves many reasons on why we can't do it. And a big one is the fear of judgment that we might face from colleagues, from clients, and at times, unfortunately, even from those closest to us, like friends and family members. Okay, so I just wanted to add that as a side note in terms of the fear of judgment and criticism, because I know a lot of you guys listening to this right now are probably finding, if you have not found yourself before, in this scenario as well. And then the fourth one, believe it or not, is actually the fear of success. And this might surprise potentially some of you, because success is often what we're aiming for, right? We all want to be successful, regardless if you are a business owner, if you are a clinician, or you wear both hats. But yet we can deep down and inadvertently fear success, and in turn ended up in self-sabotaging our own pathway to achieving what we want, what we actually want to accomplish. And why does that happen? Well, it actually ties up with the fear of the unknown quite a bit. because success leads us towards a new step on our journey, okay? Often a step that we're not familiar with, which in turn leads us towards us sabotaging ourselves as a coping mechanism, so that way we don't put ourselves in this uncomfortable, unknown position that success is going to bring to us. So for example, self-sabotaging our growth as a business because we are unsure and feel completely clueless about what is going to be the next step in terms of recruiting, hiring, and training staff, either clinical staff or administrative staff. Or if we take from more a clinical perspective, maybe us not taking a patient who has a more complicated case that we don't feel familiar with because we are unsure on how we can successfully help that dog and their owner, okay? And this last example can also exemplify also a fear of judgment. If we hesitate on helping them due to our fear on what colleagues are going to think of us, if we reach out for help, if we reach out for guidance, like a lot of us are sometimes afraid of reaching out for help on a more complicated case because we fear the judgment of colleagues. Or like I said, fear the unknown if this is a more complex case, something that you're not familiar with, okay? And I have gone through that as well. I went through it. So when I left the vet rehab clinic where I was working at to start my own mobile business, I was really questioning myself, like, oh, how can I help my neuro patients? How can I help my neuro cases without a underwater treadmill? Because I was so used to using an underwater treadmill for these neurological cases. And I questioned myself, can I actually help these patients, these pet owners? Of course, I know the answer. It's like, yes, I can, but that doesn't mean that I didn't second guess myself too. And I had to figure out other ways that I could do so, and then start learning things that I didn't know before, things like more neurodevelopmental rehab, and just really started figuring out, okay, how do I do this? Because I came from a sports medicine background as a physical therapist, so I didn't have that background working in neuro rehab as some other PTs have. So I just started learning a lot from those people. But once I felt confident on my skills, then I also had to apply that to the real world. And since then, I have actually found tremendous success on our neuro cases without an underwater treadmill, to the point that even when I opened the clinic 3 years ago, and now even when we expanded the clinic, I chose to not even have an underwater treadmill, for example. Now, that was my decision based on a variety of different factors. So I'm not, sitting here today saying that, you need to go and ditch in the water treadmill and that there are ways or something like this. But it was what worked for me, for the framework of what I wanted it for my business. And I'm mostly sharing this story more in this example of on what we tell ourselves that can't be done. We're very good about telling ourselves what can't be done, but we're not good telling ourselves what can be done and how to overcome those fears. And that's what we're going to talk about next. How do we actually move forward now that we have identified the 4 types of fears, okay? So let me preface to the fact that I'm a canine rehab therapist. I'm a business owner. I love learning about personal development and personal growth and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not a counselor. I'm not a mental health therapist or anything like that. So what I'm sharing with you all is strategies that have worked for me, okay? The first one is getting comfortable with the unknown, feeling comfortable with the fact that we don't have all of the answers right now, but that we're moving forward and that we're going to figure it out. Understanding that it was weird. It was weird 3 years ago when I first became a boss. Because the first couple of years of my business, it was just me driving all over Chicago and trying to figure this thing out. But then suddenly I became someone's boss. And it was really weird for me because I had never managed someone before in my whole life. That was a very big unknown for me. But what I've realized is that it's okay making mistakes, learning, and moving forward. And it was the same thing when then I opened the clinic. And I had all of these plans on how we're going to grow, how this is going to work, this, and then boom, COVID happened. Like I shared earlier, we opened a clinic in February of 2020. We were actually planning on hosting an open house to welcome everyone to the clinic on I think it was like March 21st or March 22nd of 2020. But then a week before, everything shut down, at least here in the United States. Everything shut down at that point in time, right? So talk about feeling uncomfortable. Talk about the unknown. That was right there. None of us had dealt with a pandemic like this before. And suddenly, not only I had to navigate that, dealing with a pandemic as a human being, as all the things that came along with that, but also as a business owner who had just accumulated debt to open a clinic and had increased our payroll ahead of that as well. Like I said, talk about feeling uncomfortable. That was it. That was very uncomfortable. But we need to realize that we need to get comfortable with the fact that you might not have all of the answers or all the solution to the problems right now, but that you can go after and you can figure it out. That you can reach out to colleagues or a group of folks who gets you. You have a community that supports you and you can figure it out. That maybe you have a mentor or someone who you look up to who can help you navigate these new waters that you find yourself on. So what I'm trying to say here is that the unknown is never truly going to go away. So instead of avoiding it, just work on getting comfortable with dealing with it. I tell my students, get comfortable with the uncomfortable, because the uncomfortable is never going to go away. So that's the first lesson from it. The second one is to look at the glass half full rather than half empty, okay? And this is a big lesson that even for those of us who are not entrepreneurs listening to it right now, that I wanted to pass along to you, that one of the biggest lessons entrepreneurship has taught me has been to look forward and not backwards, because that's how my brain is wired. That's how a lot of entrepreneurs' brains are wired. We look at the possibilities and not the implausibilities. We look at what we can do and not what we didn't do. Basically, we look at the world with a glass half full approach. The best way I can describe it is I look at things as an empty canvas, where it's up to me to figure it out what to do with it. And to be honest, that's what excites the heck out of me. And I'm going through this right now with the expansion we just did at the clinic, because now there's just so more that we can do with the new space that we have it. And I just get so excited when I start brainstorming what is that we can do, because for me, that's the empty canvas right there. And I know not everyone in this field, not everyone in this call right now has the desire or the comfort level to be an entrepreneur. But if nothing else, this is the one lesson that I want you to take today. Do not focus on the glass that's half empty, but instead look at the glass half full and what that means to you. The third thing is failing forward. So let's stop working towards trying to avoid failures and instead just learn to embrace those failures. We fear failure because we would like to avoid it. But what if instead we looked at how can we learn from it? What if instead we looked at our failures as a learning lesson, as part of our journey of growth as a vet rehabber? I guarantee to you that fear of failure will no longer affect you the day that you actually stop avoiding it and you learn to fail forward. As an individual, I was always a very positive person. That's just, as a kid, that's always who I was. But the failing forward, the fear of failure was something that always held me back. Even before business ownership, before all of this, I did not have a failing forward mentality. And it was something that I really had to work through it. For example, like I said, I grew up in Brazil playing soccer. And when I mean playing soccer, I mean like I was playing at a very competitive level ever since I was 12 years old, playing for like youth academies, you know, and working through the ranks kind of stuff. And one of looking back, you know, and reflecting back on me, I was a goalie, on me as a goalie through that process, my biggest weakness was that I used to play scared, basically, as a goalkeeper. So it wasn't a technical thing. It was actually a mindset, a psychological kind of thing. And I often played more focused on avoiding making mistakes rather than just going for it. And that really held me back. And someone asked me before, a while ago, you know, Frank, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 15-year-old self? And my answer was, if I go back in time and talk to Francisco when he was 15, I would say just that. Stop avoiding failure. Stop playing scared. Just go for it. And it took me 20 years to figure that out. But I can not tell you how liberating it is when you stop playing scared. And then the last one is define what success means to you. Success means that whatever happens, you'll be fine. That's what success really means. We should each have our own measurement of success, but ultimately, what we need to realize is that everything is going to be all right. The road might be bumpy, but it's going to be okay at the end. Life is going to throw curveballs at us. And for most people, that is what's going to stop them from achieving their full purpose. Like, I have lost count as of how many human physical therapists have reached out to me, have a conversation with me, and I heard them saying something along the lines of, oh, I would love to do animal rehabilitation, but there's always a but. Oh, but the certification. Oh, but the cost. But the legislation. But the job outlook. There's always a but. But here's the thing, there's never a perfect time for anything in life. Sometimes in our life, things are better, things are worse than other times for us to potentially accomplish other things. But I can guarantee you that there's never a perfect time for anything. What happens more often than not is that the difference becomes the desire for something more, the desire for something different. Basically a feeling of having our backs against the wall that often leads us towards us finally pushing forward, because until that point, we were just too comfortable with the current situation that we were on. And for me, that was starting my business back in 2017. That was, for the first 12 to 18 months, the biggest driver on me just getting stuff done every single day, day in and day out, was me having my back against the wall, that if I cannot figure this out, that means I would never be able to make dog rehabilitation my full-time job, that I'm always going to have to keep seeing humans on the side to make ends meet, to help pay the bills. That was my back against the wall, to do stuff every day to move forward. Success is about finally pushing forward against those circumstances and understanding that whatever happens, you're going to be fine. That whatever happens, you're going to make it through. And finally, define what that means to you and no one else, not even your spouse or significant other. You cannot tell what success means to them, so they cannot tell you what success means to you. You and only you define what success means to you. And as a vet rehabber, the success can come in many different ways. And we can't be comparing ourselves to anyone else, because we're all running our own races. We all have different goals for what we want in life, both personally and professionally. So define what means to you and stop comparing yourself so much to other people around you, okay? All right, so let's talk about imposter moments. And I love that term. It came from one of Meg Kelly's podcast episodes. So that's why I put syndrome, there, but imposter moments. But the reason why I loved when I heard that term, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so true, is because a syndrome makes it sound like there's a cure to it. But a moment makes more sense for me because it implies that it's something that we're going through right now, but that we can make it past that. It's just a moment. Okay. And that's why I love that. Okay. So what is imposter moment? What is imposter syndrome? It's that voice in the back of our heads telling us that we can't do this, that we're not worth it, that why take a risk, right? We all have it. We all have gone through it at some point in time, or maybe we're going through it right now. But what I've noticed, the difference with successful individuals is that we learn how to move beyond that. And the quicker we learn how to move beyond that, the better off we're going to be. Because we don't let that stop us. And we also don't let that define us. And at times even thrive. We even thrive during times of uncertainty, where those people who do not have the right mindset tend to quit, tend to stop, tend to sabotage themselves. Because just like I mentioned a little bit earlier about the unknown, it's the same thing with imposter syndrome, imposter moments. It's not going to go away. Don't think, guys, that once you reach a certain level of success, that's going to go away. It won't. You don't think I was sitting here this morning when I was told that there was going to be nearly 100 people on the webinar, that I didn't have a thought going through my head too? I was like, whoa, can I do this? But I quickly snapped out of it. I know I can, but your brain can get in the way. Okay. And there's always a yin to the yang. For every negative, there's always a positive, right? Or like I mentioned before, for every glass half empty, there is a glass half full. And that's all. That's why it always starts with us and within us. We got to remember that we're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. And more often than not, our mindset tends to be the culprit of what slows us down. Our mindset tends to be the weakest link in our chain. And what I often say is that your professional growth will never outpace your personal growth. And I tell that to my business owners, that your business growth will never outpace your personal growth. You are your business. No matter if you're a one-person show or if you're the one leading a team, personal development will always be a continuum that will require you to keep working on your weakest link, because the weakest link is going to change. As you work on one, something else is going to unfold, because that's how it is. You can work, you had that unknown, you had that fear of let's say, opening a clinic. Awesome. We work through it. Well, then guess what? Now you're going to need to hire. Oh, you hire. Oh, okay. Now you might need to fire. That's very uncomfortable too. That's very uncomfortable. So something else is always going to come along that is going to become the weakest link in the chain, both personally and professionally. But how many of us dedicate at least the same amount of time that we do developing our clinical skills to developing ourselves? And I was totally guilty of doing this myself either. I spent the first 5 years of my career as a physical therapist working towards becoming the best clinician that I could possibly be. But then guess what happened when I had to go out and open my own business? I had tons of weak links in the chain. My confidence, my self-belief, my fears. You see what I mean? What good are all my clinical skills and all my clinical knowledge if my brain keeps telling me that I can't do this, that I should stay on my own lane, right? So how can we move beyond it? Now, the challenge with imposter moments is that the experience of doing well at something does not necessarily change our beliefs towards imposter syndrome or imposter moments. So here's the thing, we can't simply just overwork, just over-prepare, just overstudy, or whatever. We need to start by working on ourselves and our self-belief. So for example, a very common coping strategy for imposter moments is over-preparing or overworking to make sure that you feel comfortable enough, let's say, for example, to see that more complex patient case that you're not familiar with, okay? And you do it. You over-prepare, you over-study, and you make it through it. But guess what? It's going to happen next time you have another complicated case that you're not familiar with. What do you think your brain is going to tell you? That you got this now because you've done it once? Or is your brain going to tell you that, oh, you better over-prepare and overwork even more than you did before, right? And then what do? We over-prepare, we overwork even more than we did before. And it just creates this cycle. It just creates the cycle that we never find ourselves out of it. See what I mean? So overworking, over-preparing, overstudying, getting more and more letters behind your name, thinking that that's going to be what makes you feel more confident, actually is going to backfire in the long run. So how do we instead work on ourselves to avoid this loop in our brain? What do we do? And what I have learned is that most of our success is going to be founded on two big things: chosen beliefs and disciplined behavior. Chosen beliefs is whatever you're telling yourself, right? What are the beliefs that you're telling yourself? Are you telling you chosen beliefs, or are you telling yourself false beliefs? Are you telling yourself, oh, people are not going to pay for this service in my area? Or are you telling yourself, oh, I'm not good at marketing? Or, oh, I cannot find another clinician as good as me? Or are you telling yourself, am I not good enough? That's a false belief. And then the disciplined behavior is you being accountable with yourself. And we need to stop expecting to count on motivation to get us through every day, because motivation is transient. Motivation comes and goes, but instead count on the discipline to yourself, the discipline to becoming the best version of yourself, the discipline to working on developing your weakest link into one of your biggest strengths. And also understand that there isn't a cure for imposter syndrome. So stop chasing the solution to it. And that's why I mentioned the term imposter moment really resonated with me, because imposter syndrome is not something that ever goes away. No matter how successful you become, you're still going to have feelings of imposter syndrome. And actually, sometimes the more successful you become, the bigger those feelings actually get. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Is that if your way of dealing with imposter syndrome is thinking that, oh, I just need to continue developing my clinical skills only. Not saying that you shouldn't develop your clinical skill, guys, but you need to do more than just that too. But if you're just focusing solely on your clinical skills, on getting more letters behind your name, if you're thinking that that's going to be what's going to make those feelings go away, it's actually going to do the opposite, because the gap between how you feel and what you have accomplished from an educational level is just going to increase if you don't work on yourself. So once again, there's nothing wrong with investing, becoming the best clinician and this and that, but please don't do so while neglecting the greatest asset that you have, which is yourself, your mindset. Okay. And what if we don't achieve our goals? What do we do? How easy would it be for us to feel defeated if we don't reach our goals? What are you telling yourself if you have not achieved a particular goal this year? So what? So what if you haven't achieved your goal? Setting goals is not just about achieving them, but also finding enjoyment in the pursuit of those goals. So learn to enjoy the journey rather than obsessing solely on the destination. So let's say you set a goal of having a revenue of $10,000 a month, but you only make $7,000 that month. Is that a failure? Or did you just make a good chunk of money while moving even closer to your goal of $10,000 a month in your business? Or if you set a goal of seeing 5 new patients this week, but you only see 3 new patients this week, is that a failure? Or did you just get to have a positive impact on 3 new dogs and 3 new pet owners' lives. See what I mean? It feels good hitting goals. It feeds our ego. It makes us feel accomplished. But does that define our success? Or most importantly, does that define who we are? Of course it doesn't. But we tend to tie up who we are as a person to the fact that if we have achieved or not achieved certain goals. But hopefully you see that has nothing to do with being successful or not. There's much more to success than simply hitting a goal that you have set for yourself. Okay? And then before we open up for questions, just wanted to quickly wrap it up here on what is my goal for you after today's lecture. So first, let go of any negative self-belief you have been telling yourself. Just learn to move forward. Learn to go against the wind. That's my dog Ringo there in Chicago, and they don't call the Windy City for no reason. Second, learn to embrace fear and embrace the unknown. You'll never go away, but there will always be something else coming. So instead, learn to embrace it and learn to move forward. Define what success means to you and only you. No one else can define that for you. No one else can define that for me either. And finally, this was one of the most liberating things it was ever told to me. Aim to live a life without a fear of judgment, a life without fear of failure, and a life without regret. And I promise, if you have the right mindset towards that, that's going to be so liberating for you to achieve whatever you want to achieve.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit on Saturday, the 31st of August, 2024. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Onlinepethealth members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.